I just wanted to make a video that, a simple point to refute Young Earth Creationism. I think it can be refuted just by taking the Genesis account literally. I believe in gap creation. Like there was a gap between Genesis 1, 2, and things like that. But yeah, like some of the reasons why I believe it is because I think it's more consistent and it interprets the Bible a lot better than Young Earth Creationism. And also that gap theory, I call it gap theory because there's many gap theories. Okay, there's not just one, there's many gap theories. Like pre-Adamic man, like man before Adam, and then other things. But one of the reasons why I hold to it as well is because it makes it perfectly possible to hold to an order of creation and a literal reading of Genesis. That's why I like it, and also because it's a lot more consistent. Also, I think most of Young Earth's claims, like the Earth being 6,000 years old and Noah's flood can account for all the stuff we see in geology. All that stuff, it actually comes from Seventh-day Adventism, from the Ellen G. White, their prophet. I think her revelations was false. I think she said that Adam, she said Adam was deceived by Satan, but in Job it says Adam wasn't deceived by Satan. So that's what I'm saying for people who believe the Bible, they have to side with the Bible. Can't side with her on that position. And then she's the one who said all that stuff, that Young Earth creation, what Young Earth creationists believe in, and so the origin of Young Earth beliefs are not biblical. So that's one of the reasons why I reject it, to be honest. There's a lot of reasons to reject it. And also that gap creationism, right? As a gap theorist, I can account for the Young Earth evidences as well, because I believe the Genesis account, the 6 days or 7-day creation or whatever, it is a restorative account. It's a restoration account. So there should be evidences of a young or fairly recent creation or species that have died off a long time ago, but you see them perfectly alive today. So yeah, I would say that those are evidences of a restored creation. Those aren't evidences of a young Earth. But my simple point, though, as far as what can you do to refute the Young Earth position, and I argue that you don't really have to debate even science. You just look at the Bible and just take the Genesis account literally from their perspective. I argue that, that you really can't say it's good in the beginning if you accept it, if you don't infer the gap. Like it says right here in Genesis, in the beginning God created the heaven and it says this is the King James Version. It says heaven and earth. Other translations say heavens and earth, but it's all right. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. You see right here, God never said that the earth was without form and void. God never said these things like, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. God doesn't call these things good, right? But the Young Earth, according to the Young Earth interpretation, that is, good, because they believe it's all good in the beginning. But they skip that part. They miss that part. That God's actually silent. That God doesn't say these things are good. And he even says it right here. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. So his Spirit wasn't ignorant or anything. He didn't see it. It was moving upon the same face of the waters, where the darkness was upon. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And then God saw the light, and that it was good. You see what I mean? So it's not until he starts separating stuff, till he starts calling things good. But the Young Earth interpretation, it misinterprets this. And nowhere does it say God did not say any of these things were good. The earth being without form and void, and darkness being upon the face of the deep, there being no light, no vegetation, all of these things. And it just says darkness is upon the face of the earth. It didn't say everything was covered in darkness, like the universe and all that. just says it's upon the face of the deep, the waters and stuff like that. And it goes on along to talk about how God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water called the seas. And God saw that it was good. God said, let there be light and all that kind of stuff. You know, He doesn't say these things are good. And I know some people try to say that, well, it's an unfinished work. But I argue that you can't really say it's an unfinished work, because it doesn't, the same words that are used to describe, I think in the Hebrew, they're synonymous, like, with things that are not good. Like these words without form and void and darkness. You know, they're synonymous with things that aren't good. You know, so you really can't call this an unfinished work. You're basically saying that God comes in, and He comes in and brings the creation, and in the beginning it was actually bad, you see, because these things are not actually good. Because I wanted to, you know, come to this, I wanted to read from this site. It's it's an article by Dr. Wei Kevin. His last name is spelled Tsai. This is a Gap Fully Established article. You find it online. He goes over the same things I was talking about, how those words, right, the negative aspects of Genesis, how you cannot accept that stuff as good or unfinished. That is bad, you know. If you don't infer the gap, then like something that the earth became without form and void, because actually I think somebody said you can actually, instead of the word was without form and void, it can actually say became without form and void. And so I'm saying if you read it like a Young Earth Creationist, then you technically have to accept it as God, you know, in the beginning God, you know, created the earth and it was bad, but He formed it, then it was good. You see what I mean? So they believe it was bad, and it transitioned to good when that's not really true, you know. Like, when God creates something, like when He created Lucifer, He created him perfect from that day. He was perfect in all of his ways. You see what I'm saying? Since the beginning. You see what I mean? And then you have Jesus, who says, but He was a liar and a murderer since the beginning. See what I'm saying? So that's why you have to infer the gap, because at one point in time, the earth was perfect and it was good, but it became without form and void, just like Lucifer became, you know, it became fallen and iniquity was found in him. You see what I'm saying? And that's another contradiction that young earthers cannot seem to get around, because they only say it's one beginning, you know, but the earth had many beginnings because of restoration. But I wanted to talk about the negative aspects of Genesis, like, because it's a simple point of, you don't even have to debate science, you don't have to debate any other verse, you just have to point out the fact that how they begin their position is flawed, okay, right away. And so the negative aspects of Genesis 1-2, and this is from his article, Dr. Wei Kang's article. It says, in the creation account, every word was positive except the words in Genesis 1-2. Something must have happened between Genesis 1-1 and Genesis 1-2. Without form and void, these words always refer to emptiness and uselessness, or worthlessness. That is to say, a confused, chaotic state, usually the result of some cataclysm, and often one that has been brought on by divine judgment. So it gives a word study on void. The word study on void shows that the word void is always used in a negative sense. Usually it is connected with something against God's will. And it gives you a lot of lists of verses where this word is found. Numbers 30:12 through 13:15. I think that's Deuteronomy 32:28. 1 Kings 22:10. Second Chronicles 18:9. Nehemiah 5:13. Job 15:4. Psalm 89:33-39. And Psalm 107:40. And then Psalm 119, 126. And this other one is, I think it's Proverbs 7:7. Proverbs 10:13. Proverbs 11:12. Proverbs 12:11. Proverbs 15:21. Sorry. Proverbs 17:18. Proverbs 24:30. And then Isaiah 55:11. Jeremiah 4:23. 19, and then Jeremiah 19:17. Ezekiel 45:2, and NA. I forgot what NA was, but it's NA 2:10. Then it's Acts 24:16, Romans 1:28, and Romans 3:31, Romans 4:14, 1 Corinthians 9:15, and Titus 1:16. Okay, and then it says the word study on without form and void shows two appearances, Genesis 1:2 and Jeremiah 4:23, and these two places are identical in description. Jeremiah 4:23, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and it says, and the heavens, and they had no light. This passage is of particular interest because of its description of the divine judgment upon the land of Israel and the exact same terms used of the ruined earth in Genesis 1:2. Jeremiah must therefore have understood the Genesis 1:2 description in the same way. Therefore, Genesis 1:2 should refer to a divine judgment. Furthermore, God says the original earth was created in a habitable form. Isaiah 45:18. For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it, he created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. The word for create in this verse is above is the same verb used in Genesis 1:1, and the word most commonly employed in the Old Testament to describe the Lord's miraculous creative acts. According to this passage, God's purpose is originally creating earth was for its useful habitation. Okay, so then it's the darkness. Genesis 1:2, the darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Darkness is symbolic of evil, and is also associated with evil or judgment of God. The description of earth was lying under a shroud of darkness is meant to present a very negative picture, not one of blessings, which we should expect in the wonderful original paradise of Genesis 1:1, but of cursing instead. A survey of some of the uses of darkness in the Bible would make this point clear. Darkness as a symbol of evil. And it gives verses, Ephesians 5:11, Ephesians 6:12, Colossians 1:13, 1 John 1:6, 1 John 2:11, and it talks about how light as a symbol of good. John 1:4 through 5, 1 John 1:5, James 1:17, Revelations 21:23-24, and it talks about darkness and light contrast. Matthew 6:23, John 3:19, Acts 26:18, Romans 13:12, Ephesians 5:18, 2 Corinthians 6:14, 1 Peter 2:9, Thessalonians 5:4 through 5. It talks about darkness resulting from divine judgment. Darkness is very real, inflicted in literal fashion as part of judgment of God. And it gives the verses of Isaiah 5:30, Isaiah 8:22, Ezekiel 32:7 through 8, Acts 13:11. The supernatural darkness upon Pharaoh's kingdom. Darkness was one of the 10 plagues upon the Egypt, which demonstrated God's power over Pharaoh. Exodus 10:21 through 29, Psalms 105:28. A similar divine blotting out of all light occurs at Exodus 14:20. Here the cloud of God's presence creates a supernatural darkness for the purpose of restraining the Egyptian army, yet at the same time it provides light to the Israelites, which Joshua 24:7. The supernatural darkness as the crucifixion, just as the Passover lamb. The poignant type of Jesus Christ dying for us was commanded to be slaughtered between the evenings, at time neither clearly day or night. Exodus 12:6, 29, 39 through 41. So Christ's death on behalf of all mankind was destined to be accompanied by an analogous yet supernatural darkness. The recent synoptic gospel writers all record this darkness, lasting approximately 3 summertime hours. Matthew 27:45 through 54, Mark 15:33 through 39, Luke 23:44 through 49, with Luke adding the important detail that the sun was darkened. Immediately following the period of unprecedented darkness, the veil of the temple is split miraculously into two, and our Lord breathes his last until his resurrection. Thus the supernatural darkness of the cross is likewise a sign of divine judgment. Our Lord Jesus Christ on our behalf submitting to the Father's judgment upon all our sins and dying in our place. He endures this terrible darkness and all that is entailed that we might forever live in delight with him. The supernatural darkness at the second advent. Prior to the return of the Lord, the second advent, earth will undergo its most terrible period of history. It talks about great tribulations. Daniel 12:1, Matthew 24:21, 29, Mark 13:19 and 24, Revelation 7 and 14. But before the devil and his Antichrist can accomplish their first annihilation of all believers, the day of the Lord will begin. And the wonders of judgments will shake the earth and never before. Joel 2, it even gives a verse in Joel 2:1. And a period of supernatural darkness is prophesied as one of the final portents immediately preceding Christ's return. A judgment from God upon Antichrist and his kingdom. And it gives verses on Isaiah 13:9 through 13, and Isaiah 34:4, Isaiah 60:1 through 2, Ezekiel 32:7 through 10, Joel 2:2, and then Joel 2:10, Joel 2:31, Joel 3:15, and then I forgot Zephaniah. I forgot that book. Zeph, right? 1:15 through 18, and then Zechariah 14:6 through 7. Matthew 24:29, Mark 13:24 to 25, Acts 2:17-21, Revelation 6:12 through 13, and then Revelation 16:10. The supernatural darkness of the lake of fire. Hell will be a terrible place and unbearable darkness. This is despite the fact that hell is also described as a lake of burning sulfur and fire. And it gives you all these verses, even though I don't believe in hell. The lake of fire, I believe the lake of fire is the second death, but that's death to the unchrist nature, the unchrist-like nature, because the whole point is to be conformed to the image of Christ, right? So lake of fire is not a literal death, because death is cast in first, and the hell thing is a mistranslation. I forgot what it means in this verse, but I personally don't believe there's a hell anyway. So because I think that's this invention of Christianity, just like Young Earth Creationism. It's all false prophecy and stuff. But that's beside the point. This is therefore, from everything we know about the use of the meaning of darkness elsewhere in the Bible, to describe the universe as dark and without light, as Genesis 1:2 does, is to describe a status quo of cursing rather than blessing, and of divine judgment rather than original miraculous creation. And then it goes on to talk about the problem of the deep and stuff like that. So it's actually a really good article. I'll see if I can post the link somehow, because I have it saved on my phone. I'll try to find the link to put it on the video. But this basically, it goes over why you can't really accept the Young Earth Creationist position on a literal reading of Genesis, because it's totally obscures, like what God is doing, and it actually puts words into God's mouth that God never said. God never said that the darkness was good. He never said the earth being without form and void was good. He never said those things were good, but according to the Younger Creationists, the creation starts off like that, but God doesn't say anything that it's good. In fact, it's just like I just read right from this article, it's that those words are synonymous with things that are not good, not things that are not finished, and not things that are good. They're always synonymous with things that are not good. So by default, the Younger Creationist is lying, or it's not telling the truth, not being truthful when he says that everything is good in the beginning, but then he accepts certain things that are clearly not good. This is evident of a divine judgment. That something happened to the world, and God restored it in 6 days, separating the darkness from the light, and letting the earth appear, like the land, separating the waters from, the land and stuff like that, and rehabitable, conditions and stuff like that. So it talks about the supernatural darkness, things like that. Talks about the problems of the deep, the problems of the seas, and things like that. But that's just a simple point to refute the Young Earth position. Even from a literal reading of Genesis, is that it's not good in the beginning, according to the Young Earth Creationists, even though he would like to believe, because he would like to believe it's all good in the beginning. Because I saw Ken Hovind's debate with Huge Ross, and he basically kept saying the same thing, like to Huge Ross, that hey, God calls it's all good in the beginning, right? There was no death and all that stuff, but these conditions that he calls good, right? Because he is saying this stuff is good. The earth covered in darkness, being without form and void. He's saying that stuff is good, even though God is silent. God didn't say that stuff was good, and that stuff is clearly not good. So it's not an unfinished work either. So yeah, you can't accept this interpretation. So that's why I say Young Earth Creationism falls flat on its face, even from the get-go. So I don't have to debate any other position. I don't have to argue science. I don't have to argue theology. All I have to point is to a literal reading of Genesis and what these words mean. Okay, that is enough to refute the Young Earth position.